There has to be some common sense.
Yes, sir. They have the car stopped at 10th and Ranch Microbizer.
We still don't know who pulled the trigger.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, Bill Cannon. I'm a retired 27-year veteran of the NYPD. I retired as a sergeant. With me today, usually straight out of Brooklyn, but today he's straight out of Florida. He's on vacation. My co-host, retired NYPD detective, Phil Grimaldi. How you doing today, Phil?
I'm doing pretty good, Billy.
Listen, I know that a dear friend of yours just passed away, and I want to give you a couple of minutes just to read a tribute and just reach out to him, his family, and people that loved him. You got the whole screen.
Thank you, Billy. Yeah, on Monday, I'm down here in Florida. I'm in Deerfield Beach, and we came down with a bunch of family for Easter week. And on Monday afternoon, a friend of mine who had been very sick with 9/11 related cancer passed away. Joe Ponzi. Joe Ponzi was just one hell of a human being. He was a bureau chief in the Brooklyn DA's office. He started out in the late 70s as an investigator, became a polygraph expert, and then moved up the ranks and became the chief investigator for the Brooklyn DA's office. I think his career spanned about 37 years. I'm actually distantly related to Joe through marriage. My uncle through marriage is his mom's first cousin. And I don't want to make my friendship with Joe about the job. It really was about the job. That's how I actually met him. But I was very fond of Joe because of his stature as a wonderful, wonderful human being. My point is that I didn't like him because he was an accomplished bureau chief in the DA's office. I liked him because he was a good person. He was a good human being. When I got the word, there were family around me, and they expressed condolences, and they kept saying to me, sorry for your loss, sorry for your loss. But I said, don't be sorry for me. Be sorry for the human race. Be sorry for the world, because they lost a really, really good human being, a great guy, Joe Ponzi. My deepest condolences to his family, his friends. I've had an outpouring of calls over the last couple of days. Everybody's just devastated by the news. And I know, Billy, you offered to do a tribute show for him, and we're going to have some of his closest friends and colleagues. When we do that, we'll probably do it, I guess, sometime in the near future. But Joe, rest in peace. God bless your family. He was just such a hell of a family man. He has 3 beautiful daughters, and I think he has about 8 or 9 grandchildren. And he's going to be sorely missed. Joe, we love you. God bless, and condolences to your family.
You know, folks, also, he was one of the authors of the book Friends of the Family with Tommy Dade. So he was big on the Mafia Cops case. I mean, not that, but that's just part of his legacy. And I know that our very good friend, Tommy Dades, is very upset about this also. And Tommy Dades, offer all condolences to you and the loss of your friend.
Absolutely.
Today, we're going to get to a case that at first I wasn't going to cover it, but Orsolya Gaal, a mom, a 51-year-old mom from Forest Hills, which is a very affluent neighborhood in Queens, she was murdered on Saturday morning. And it's sort of taken some twists and turns. Initially, in homicide investigation, you always look to the people closest to the deceased. And right away, of course, the police did, and they looked at the 13-year-old son who had been home, and they brought him into the precinct in handcuffs, and he was cleared. And then the father and the other son were away looking at colleges on the West Coast. So now they have to start looking at other people. I'm going to give you a little bit of background on the case in a short news report, and we're going to play this on the screen, and you'll get an idea of what actually occurred in this case.
On its hands, involving the brutal death of a mother from a quiet section of Queens. Orsolya Gaal was killed over the weekend. Police say she was stabbed dozens of times. Her body later found on the side of a road in a duffel bag in a neighborhood lined with Tudor-style homes, and now grieving families.
But closer to home is the part that is really shocking.
As investigators try and track down Gall's killer, this home surveillance video obtained by our New York station WNBC may show the person responsible, according to their police sources. A jogger discovered that duffel early morning and called 911.
Sure, suspect.
Authorities then following a trail of blood to Gall's home about a half-mile away.
It's very frightening and concerning.
Detectives are working to construct a timeline of Gall's final hours, with police sources telling WNBC the suspect sent her husband a threatening message from her cell phone Saturday morning. Authorities have reportedly identified a person of interest, multiple law enforcement sources telling WNBC it's a man who knew Gaal and had access to her home. On social media, the pain palpable. One person writing on her Facebook page, "I will always remember how passionate you were about your boys and their education." Another commenting, "We were just on the phone together just days ago speaking about colleges. My heart is broken." Gaal's husband and oldest son were visiting colleges on the West Coast, according to police sources who believe their 13-year-old son may have been home when she was killed. The shocking murder coming as New York City faces an uptick in overall crime, more than 43% year over year.
You know, I say over and over again, there are many rivers that feed the sea of violence. This is a national issue.
In Queens, the tragedy leaving this residential community stunned.
It's heartbreaking. Heartbreaking. And by the day, it gets worse.
And the medical examiner's office confirming Gaal's death has been classified a homicide because of the violent nature of her death. And obviously, guys, a lot of questions to be answered here.
Yeah, sad and scary story. All right, Sam, thank you for that.
Posted.
Just to correct the news report, it wasn't classified as a homicide because of the violent nature of it, because it's clear that she was stabbed to death. She was stabbed between 58 and 60 times. Which also, to us in the homicide profession, know that that means, usually, well, we know, Phil, when a knife is used, that also means it's a very personal type of thing. The killer is known to her. There's no doubt in my mind he's known to her. And the fact that she's stabbed 58 to 60 times, that this is really someone that was perceived was done wrong. Could this have been, they're talking about a person of interest, could this have been an affair that she walked away from, that she broke off, and it caused this type of rage? Something else, when I saw that person in the video wheeling that duffel bag down the street, that may not mean anything to a lot of people seeing that, but to people that know the perpetrator, the way he moves, his gait may mean everything. They could say, that's so-and-so. That's the way he walks. That's the way he moves. Someone's gait is very identifiable. So that video says more than it to investigators and to people that know who the perpetrator is than it will just to the average person, because obviously there's no face identified in that. But the whole overall body and the way he moves can tell a lot.
Absolutely, Billy. I think in this particular case, obviously extremely, extremely violent. Like you said, rage. When we see a stabbing where there's that many multiple stab wounds, that's an indication of extreme rage. The reports that I read say that there were defensive wounds on her hands as well. So there was obviously some type of a struggle to defend herself. There's defensive wounds on her hands. And then you have a clear video of a person pulling that duffel bag down the block. Obviously, you can't see the person's face, but that right there, we have the killer. I think it's almost a 100% gimme that is the killer of this young lady. He's pulling the bag down the block. The blood trail goes right back to her house, and I'm sure that there's going to be extensive canvases for other video along that route to see, between the location where the body was found in the house, to see if there's going to be other surveillance video that will have a clearer picture of the perpetrator. And again, like you said, I was involved in a homicide case about 5 or 6 years ago where there was video of a person walking, and the person's close relative was brought in and shown that video, and they said, yes, that's my husband. So, there's ways of identifying a person, even like you said, by the way they walked, how they walked. It looked like that person, I think it looked like he had some type of a backpack on as well. And this is a very personal, close-up murder, as the medical examiner stated, sharp force injury to the neck. So it appears that the injuries that were caused, the stabbing, 58, 60 stabs, it seems like the ones to the neck are what caused the death of the person. So again, very personal. And again, where the location of the stab wounds on the body are indicative of certain factors with regard to violence and the person that may have stabbed this woman. So again, I don't think it's a stranger, just a victim of opportunity. This seems very focused on this woman.
100%. Folks, I just want to say the way homicide investigation is conducted is when you first start the investigation, a lot of things have to be eliminated and a lot of things have to be included. The first thing, of course, they did was eliminate the son, the 13-year-old son. They brought him in there because usually it's someone very, very close to the deceased, known to. So they eliminated the son. Right away, they eliminated the father and the other son that were on the West Coast. Now, they got to do what's called a victimology. And what a victimology is the study of the victim. And we got to look into the victim's background. Sometimes they call it victim backgrounding. We got to look into the victim's backgrounding. And one of the things you're going to hear about, and we'll talk about it later on also, is a timeline. A timeline is so, so important. And one of the most important things is, where was the victim prior to this occurrence? Where did she go? I believe earlier in the night, she had gone to Lincoln Center to see a show. And then later on in the night, actually 40 minutes before she went home, she was at a local bar drinking by herself. Now, so you may say, was she sitting in that bar waiting for someone? Was she going to meet the potential killer that later on killed her that night? Or did that have nothing to do with it? Another thing we're going to find is that a treasure trove of information, of course, is her cell phone. All right. It's going to track where she is. There's going to be incoming, outgoing texts, incoming, outgoing emails. All of that information is so, so important in a homicide investigation. The other things that investigators surmise is that there was no forced entry into this house. So now again, as Phil and I say all the time, we hate the term person of interest. We hate that term. They've identified a person of interest. We like the term suspect. All right. And even if he turns out not to be a suspect, I think he's the suspect. All right. Person of interest to me, it's an annoying term. Anyway, someone got into that house there was no forced entry. So someone knew where the key was, or they got in some other way through a window, but there's no forced entry. Also an indicator that she may have known her killer. And then we talk about the violent nature of this, the 58 to 60 stab wounds. The other thing is, in most stabbing incidents, the perpetrator cuts himself. So there very well could be the perpetrator's blood commingled with the decedent's blood in the crime scene. Very, very important. And we in New York are we expect an arrest the next day. We're impatient. Let me put it that way. We're impatient with our police. However, our police, and you've heard Phil and I say this a million times, they need to cross their T's and dot their I's, and they need to do everything correctly. All right. The next thing I would want to do when we bring in this person of interest who I describe as a suspect, and we attempt to interview him, I would also like to know where his cell phone is. And then if he really is a heavy duty suspect, we want to take a very, very deep dive into this guy. And again, we talked about victimology. I'm going to talk about perpology. We're going to do a backgrounding, a study of this suspect. And that's where we get a great deal of information. All right. Again, we have that video of someone wheeling that duffel bag up the street. Does he fit the description of that person? That person looks sort of small to me. How is his gait? Does his gait fit the way that person moved? So all of these things are a treasure trove. I want to see his car. I want to look at his Easy Pass. I want to talk to all his friends. Where was he? Who's he work with? Does he have an alibi? Where was he at that time? So all of these things, there is so much information, and we have it way out here. We want to bring it in here. We want to bring it closer and closer and closer till you get all the evidence, and boom, you got him. All right. So that's how we're looking at. And look, we need to have patience with our police. We need to have patience with our investigators, the news, the people in the neighborhood. I don't think this guy is a threat to the people in the neighborhood. I think this was a very specific murder of a known two. I don't think this is someone burglarizing homes and just happened upon her. I think if that was the case, he wouldn't have stabbed her 60 times. Phil.
Yeah, this is not a serial killer or anything like that. This is either someone that was known to her or someone that was given the key to the house or given access to the home, so that way they could get in, they can do what the person did. Now, again, in the home, I would like to know, the son apparently was home, the 13-year-old son. They took him out of the house in handcuffs. It sounds to me like they believe strongly that this murder took place in that home. So again, if he's home and this murder takes place, how could he not have heard it? He could have been sleeping, could have been in another area of the home. So that is possible. It sounds like they've cleared him as a suspect. They did put him in handcuffs, however, when they removed him. So they were probably looking at him as possibly being a suspect right away because of the fact it sounds like the murder took place inside the home. Now, again, Billy, you brought up some really good points in the few statements that you just made. Again, I would want to look under her fingernails to see if there's any DNA. She could have scratched the guy. During the struggle, the 58, 60 stab wounds, he may have cut himself. We're going to be looking for blood other than her blood at the crime scene. That piece of luggage that he was rolling down the block, if he cut his hand, there could be his blood on that luggage. Those are all going to be very, very important crime scene recovery of evidence locations that I would definitely want to be on top of that. Again, once we zero in on the suspect, like Billy said, now we're going to have possibly his blood on that suitcase, possibly his own blood at the crime scene. And then when we find out who he is, maybe we can find bloody clothing where he lives, where he may have dumped bloody clothing. So there's going to be intensive searches done, intensive examination by the crime scene unit of the location where the body was discovered, as well as where the actual crime took place, which appears to be in that home. And once we do narrow down a suspect, we identify him, we'll have all this other ammunition that we can place him at the scene. Again, Billy, you brought up the cell phone. Where's his cell phone? His cell phone could have been pinging at that exact location where the murder took place at the time that we believe it took place. So again, it doesn't sound like this is a stranger that killed this woman. It sounds like someone known to her, had access to the home. Like you said, no forced entry. And again, all the very, very important things, the victimology and the perpology, as you stated, those are going to be very important things that are being done in this case.
Alicia B., police off the cuff. What would be some reasons the offender would move the body? Well, he wants to get his dirty deed as far away from him as he can. And by throwing her or moving her half a mile or a mile away with that duffel bag, that's one way. It's in his mind, really. He could have just fled out of there and left the body. But it's a part of his psychology that made him do that. This is a good question, Alicia B.
That is a very good question. And again, it could be that he's a relative or a friend of the family and he didn't want the child to see the body. Even though he's a murderer, he could have thoughts like that in his head. We don't know what the relationship is exactly, whether it's a friend, a relative. But again, things like that could be part of it. I guess we'll get a better picture of why he did that when they do, zero in on the suspect. But yeah, that's a great question.
Phil, there could be twists and turns to this. Right now, we're just giving our audience, we're talking about techniques of what should be done. It's almost there are checklists in homicide investigations. There's things that must be done, and that doesn't mean that's going to solve the case. Sometimes you have to also think outside the box. Has the husband and the 17-year-old son have been completely cleared? I'm not part of the investigation to know the inner workings of this. But one of the things when we talk about victimology is we can't really ask the husband about his wife's friends and about what she does in her very, very private life, which he may not even know about. So who we would ask is her friends. Who is her best friend? Who are some of her inner circle? They'll know about if there is in fact this handyman that she'd have an affair with. They'll know about him. They'll know about him by name. Who do you think the police would get the name from? In addition, her cell phone. Let's see her frequency of calls. Who's she calling all the time? All right. Who's calling her? Who's texting her? Who is she texting? All of those things. How about, when we take a deeper dive, and I love to say this, we look into the finances. Sometimes finances is like, oh my God, why didn't I check this sooner? The answer just becomes apparent, but sometimes it doesn't. But we have to, I talk about the investigation, see my arms way out here. We want to start way out here and start focusing in and bringing that investigation and fine-tuning that investigation till we have the suspect.
Absolutely, Billy. And I think that it sounds very amateurish. What I mean by that is I don't think this is a well thought out plan, to kill somebody and stuff them into a suitcase and leave a trail of blood to where you dump the body. It's obviously not very professional in nature. I don't think it was well thought out. It sounds like a fit of rage, the violence, the violent nature of the killing, the rage, and it may have been something that just set off the person, and they didn't think it through. They didn't think it clearly. But I think that there's going to be an arrest made in this case. I'm almost certain of it.
Yeah, I think that let me just pull this off the screen, and I'm going to put it back on there. I think that this is a crime of passion, and I'd be very surprised if it doesn't come back as that. I'm going to play a little bit of some file tape from the news and see what they have to say here.
Investigators are now exploring the victim's relationship with several men. CBS 2's Kieran Dillon live in Forest Hills with that new information. Kieran?
Maurice and Christine, this story has absolutely devastated this quiet community here in Forest Hills. We're actually outside of the victim's home where this remains an active investigation. Take a look behind me right now so you can see for yourself. Now, officers have been camped out outside of the home for days. New today, the NYPD is now offering a reward of $3,500 for anyone with information that leads to an arrest in connection to Orsoya Gaal's death. Now, sources tell us investigators believe Gaal was killed by someone she knew inside of her home here on Juno Street this weekend. We've just learned detectives are now delving deeper into the victim's relationship with several men. They are probing possible past romantic links to at least one individual based on her electronic communications with him. Exactly what happened to the mother of two remains a mystery, but sources tell us she went to a show at the Lincoln Center with female friends on Friday night. She returned home to Forest Hills and went to a bar. Gaal's body was then found several hours later in a duffel bag a few blocks away from her home. She was suffering from more than 50 stab wounds. So, of course, as I mentioned, this story is just horrifying to neighbors here. We actually spoke to a family electrician today who dropped by to leave flowers and mourn. Here's what he had to say about what happened.
Every time I work here, they treat me like family. It's a very nice family. Like, who would want to hurt her? She was a very, very nice lady.
So police have yet to release any information about a possible motive for this attack. Again, they are asking anyone with any information to contact them.
So there you go. One of the things that we suggested was that they look at her cell phone, and they're saying that she had some messages from a certain individual. So they have someone who is I believe, a suspect. And again, I won't use that person of interest term. I believe they have a potential suspect. I said, well, how about that, Phil? Is that okay? Potential
I would
suspect?
say that, yeah. Listen, that person of interest, it's a dressed up term that media people like to use. We know where it's going. Billy, you hit it right on the nail right on the head. The cell phone information is obviously leading to a person that they believe that they're zeroing in on, a possible love interest. And I think it was a little bit out of character when they talk about how the husband and the son was out checking the school, the college that he was going to go to. I know when we did college tours with my children, my wife was right in there. And maybe there was a reason for that. Maybe she wanted the husband to be away so she could have this meeting or a hookup with an ex-lover or a current lover, whatever it was. So again, that's slightly suspect to me, not a major red flag, but I would think that, most college visits, a lot of time it's the whole family goes, or but I would think that that might be a little bit of. I would be asking the husband about that. How did it come to be that you went with your son to the college visit?
You know, folks, this is Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. If you're not subscribed to us, please go on our YouTube, hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, ring that bell. And if you want to support us, we have a Patreon, and there's 3 different levels. And if you want to become part of the Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories family, you can join us on our YouTube. You see the folks with the green font. They belong to our Police Off the Cuff YouTube family. And there's 5 different levels of that. And I just want to thank all of our folks in the chat, all of our channel members, all our Patreon members. Moonlight View, someone she knew, throwing the lead off by saying it was retaliation. Look, I'm not buying any of this retaliation thing. This is a crime of passion. To me, there's no doubt to it. Some of you folks in the chat had suggested a hit. Or this. No hit guy is going to stab someone 60 times.
Yeah.
A hit guy is going to shoot you or stab you once and kill you. They're not going to stab you 60 times.
Right.
This is a crime of passion. And, it's sort of like, and I hate to say this, but it's sort of like homicide investigation 101. You learn this right in the beginning. Like, that's a crime of, first of all, using a knife is a very personal way to kill somebody. And, when someone stabs someone 58 or 60 times, and in this incident, there's a lot of evidence of defense wounds. When she's got stab wounds on her hands and her arms, trying to block the attack, that shows she's fighting for her life. And very much so, it's almost, I would say, 90 to 100% that she knows the person involved in this attack.
Billy, you're really drawing down on my thinking on this as well. I think me and you are right in the same lane. When you have that many stab wounds, it's showing tremendous anger, rage. Like you said, if it was a person that was hired to kill her or a hit or something like that, it would be either a neck wound, one neck wound, a stab to the back to puncture a lung, a stab in the chest to catch the heart. It wouldn't be all of these extensive wounds. Again, that text message, that seemed like an afterthought. Had a person got access to the phone, and maybe, usually the phone's locked. They must have known the information to get into that phone. And that was just maybe an afterthought to throw off, investigators throw off the husband, maybe place fear into the husband. But this is very personal. This is extreme anger, extreme rage. I had a homicide years back, a similar a stabbing homicide where there were extreme amounts, overkill. There was the suspect had deep hatred for the person, deep hatred. And there was extensive stab wounds to the chest, and then post-mortem, a cut across the throat, sliced the person's throat. So again, that was an extremely violent, extremely anger-filled homicide. That's what this sounds like to me. Something set that person off, and it seems like they had extreme anger and rage towards the victim in this case.
Folks, on the screen, there's a little bit of a timeline. Friday, April 15th, Gail goes out with friends and is spotted on camera. Saturday, April 16th, Gail returns home just after midnight. And of course, Gaal is, actually it's pronounced Gaal, is her last name. Her first name's a little tough to pronounce. Orsolya, I think it's pronounced. Saturday, April 16th, around 4:30 a.m. This is, we see the video of a man wheeling the duffel bag. A mysterious figure is seen dragging a duffel bag down the sidewalk from Gaal's home. And Saturday, April 16th at 8 a.m., a dog walker discovers the duffel bag with the remains in the bag. I'm just going to play a bit of this and
night of the crime. Katie?
It is now day 5 in the search for Orsolya Gaal's killer, and the NYPD is stepping up its investigation, now offering a $3,500 reward for information leading to an arrest. Our police sources tell us that investigators are looking at several possible suspects, including someone who did work for the family and knew where they kept their spare key. The key questions in the murder of Orsolya Gaal remain a mystery. Who killed the 51-year-old mother of 2 and why? But we are starting to get a clearer picture of what transpired in the hours before her death. Police sources tell Pix 11 News that Gaal attended a show Friday night in Lincoln Center and then spent 45 minutes waiting at a bar for someone who never showed. Police say Gaal eventually returned to her Juneau Street home, where she was stabbed nearly 60 times in her basement early Saturday morning. Her killer reportedly stuffed her body in a hockey duffel bag, dumped it half a mile away, and sent a disturbing text to Gaal's husband, who was out of town, saying, quote, "Your whole family is next." Surveillance video shows a shadowy figure dragging a rolling duffel down Juneau Street Saturday morning. Sources say a trail of blood from the bag led police back to Gaal's home. It also appears Gaal knew her killer because investigators say there were no signs of forced entry. Neighbors remain stunned.
I've lived here for 40 years, and we've never had anything like this happen.
Horror, absolute horrifying. It's just, you don't expect something like that to happen here, and you don't expect that, you don't want it to happen anywhere, especially where you live. And it just, and I think it's like the gruesome details that keep coming out just really struck a chord.
Our sources say Gaal's husband is cooperating and even turned over his cell phone to investigators. We are also told that the suspect left behind a piece of evidence at the scene, which will hopefully help police catch Gaal's killer. Adrian, back to you.
So some interesting little tidbits from the news there. Look, obviously there's a thing called, and we spoke about it, and probably on Duty Ron's show with Ed Wallace, you hear this a lot more. It's called Locard's theory of exchange. And that has to do with evidence exchange. When two bodies come in contact with each other, it's called exchange of evidence. And that's him touching her, him touching him. There'll be an exchange of evidence, but they don't have him right now. So potentially the clothes he's wearing, he either threw out or washed. But there's other good good possibilities on her body. There could be his DNA based on the fact she was trying to defend herself. She could have his skin underneath her fingernails when she was trying to maybe scratch and defend herself. So that's when we talk about Locard's theory of exchange. We may not find him right now and get the evidence he certainly would have on him from her, i.e. blood evidence, but we have her. And she could very potentially have his evidence, the exchange of evidence on her that will identify him.
Absolutely, Billy. And the reporter made mention there that there was evidence left behind that will implicate the suspect. We don't know if that's possibly his cell phone or some other piece of personal article that belongs to him. It could be a bloody fingerprint. There's so many possibilities. But I do think that it sounds like she was lured into that basement and maybe for a quick conversation, and apparently turned very violent. And maybe that's why the son, who was probably home at the time, didn't hear it. He may have been in the upstairs area of the home. It sounds like between sometime after midnight and that 4:30 in the morning video of the suspect taking the body down the block, that's when the murder occurred. It sounds like they're zeroing in someone that worked for this family, some type of a handyman or some type of a worker. And there may have been some type of relationship between her and this person. And it turned extremely violent, obviously.
You know, every once in a while, I'll refer to someone in the chat and they corrected me, and they corrected me correctly. I said that the figure wheeling the duffel bag down the street was a man, and we don't know. You're right. You're very right. That could be a woman. What do they say? When you assume, you make an ass of you and me. So I'm assuming it was a man. You're right. You're 100% right. I don't know exactly identify the person that said that, but could that be a woman? Absolutely. So shame on me. You're right.
Anything's possible at this point. That figure that we saw is not very clear. I'm leaning towards it looks like a male too, Billy. But again, we don't know. It's going to be figured out as this investigation rolls forward. I'm very certain, I'm very confident that the investigators are closing in on whoever it is. They may already have this person in custody as we speak, or doing a lot of background on that person and keeping tabs on them. But I don't think it's going to be a long, drawn-out investigation before there's an arrest. I would say arrest is imminent at this point.
One of the things, folks, that, and everyone gets nervous and everyone gets impatient. Why didn't the police make an arrest? Why didn't the police make an arrest? Sometimes the police have to wait till the evidence comes back. The other thing is cell phone evidence just doesn't, you don't, subpoena AT&T and T and subpoena these phone carriers. And they're not saying, oh, the police are demanding this. And they give it back at their leisure, you know, could take days, could take a week, you know, and a lot of these tests that we're talking about of evidence, they sometimes can take weeks, days or weeks. Identifying blood should happen a little quicker these days. I remember we had a double murder in East Harlem in 2001, December 1st, 2001. I always remember that date. And we made the arrest in like about 5 or 6 days. About a month later, the blood of one of the perps was found in the crime scene. But, we could have used that to ID him, but it didn't come, but it still helped in the case. It showed that he was in the apartment, although they both confessed. But still, the evidence, the physical evidence, fiber evidence, blood evidence, DNA evidence, hair, mitochondrial DNA, all of that stuff takes time. One of the things I used to, in homicide, I used to always count on my detectives was so good. Bring him in. We'll get a confession, and that was before we had the enough evidence to go forward if the guy clammed up. But I always, and probably not the smartest thing, but they were so good that I say, just bring him in. We'll get him to talk. And they confess. And that's such strong and powerful evidence when someone confesses and you compare the confession with the evidence, the confession with the timeline, the confession, what the person who's confessing is telling you. Powerful, powerful evidence.
Billy, I'm glad you're bringing that up because there's another component to this whole story that we really haven't touched upon is that your conferral with the district attorney's office. You're going to bring forward the district attorney into the case immediately. Usually in Brooklyn, when I worked homicide cases, district attorney's office would be notified as soon as we responded to a homicide scene. Not usually immediately, like as soon as we got there, but we would gather some information and evidence. We would notify the district attorney's office. If there were witnesses that were present, district attorney's office would send the representative and assistant district attorney down to the scene to interview that person. So again, you're going to be confirmed with the DA's office, and the DA's office is going to be saying, okay, do this, do that, let's get this done before they authorize an arrest. Now in Brooklyn, it was always district attorney's office would authorize the arrest. So again, you're making a great point. A lot of times we didn't have a whole lot of evidence that we could say to the district attorney's office, this is why we want to arrest a person. Here's what we got. So then we would say it would be a judgment call. As you brought up, Billy, if you have good investigators, let's bring this person in and talk to him. Because now if we have a confession and we're still waiting on blood evidence or fibers or telephone information or video surveillance cameras and different things of that nature, we have a confession, we're going to move forward with an arrest at that point, as long as, like you said, it matches up to the crime scene. We believe that this person has pertinent information and they're giving it to us. They're making a confession, telling us things that haven't been reported to the public. We know that this is the right person. So now we're going to make the arrest, and then like not like on TV where things happen in an hour, a 60-minute show, they have all the information, they pick up the phone and they get subpoenas for telephone records like that. Doesn't work that way. So now we will continue after we make the arrest to build the case, put all the evidence together. Like you said, Billy, we close in on the person. We put all the nails into the coffin, so to speak.
Absolutely. Mercy K, who was she with that night and who was she waiting for at the bar? Mercy K,
that's the
very great question. And you know something? Her cell phone is going to tell the police a great deal of information because she's having a drink at the bar. She's texting or she's on her phone during that time. They know who she was on the phone with. They know who maybe she was planning on meeting. And so those are the things, and great suggestion. Those are the things that they know that we don't know. Betty Smith, Alicia B. Yup, I saw one article saying he was an ex-handyman. Could have been a 20-plus-year-old. I think he looks young too. It was messy with him, even not thinking to avoid having blood leaking. Betty Smith, one of the things that the police department has, and to the chagrin of many investigators sometimes, is a unit called Deputy Commissioner of Public Information. And they give out information, sometimes top secret information to the press, and sometimes that harms these cases. And they give them out too early sometimes because they want to be, clear with the press. They want to give, what's the term I'm looking for? They want to just be open-minded and give the information to the press so that potentially the press can help you also, so that not everyone in this neighborhood is thinking there's a serial killer around, that this may have been a very specific murder. So they give this information. The other thing is there's sometimes leaks from investigators, which also can harm the case. And on several
100%.
occasions, the police department has disciplined people like that and actually subpoenaed detectives' phones to get the information to see who was talking to certain reporters. And I don't know if it actually helps the case to say, oh, we're looking for a handyman, because now the police know who they're looking for, but I don't know if that specifically helps the case, because what if this guy turns out not to be the guy they're looking for? But it helps it helps for the public. The public is really nervous now that there could be this psychotic murderer walking around in Forest Hills, Queens, New York. So it allays their fears, and that could be one of the reasons. But it also can hurt the case, And I was never for giving a lot of the inside information to the press, but you see how much information is out there. It's a lot.
Absolutely, Billy. And you made the point about the Deputy Commissioner of Public Information. Those last two words, public information. There are certain things when you have a victim of a homicide, once that person is identified, that person's name becomes public information. The public has a right to know about a person being killed if could be a threat to others in the area. That's why things like that, like the person's name is given out, a location is given out. The public at large has the right to know certain things. Now, when you talk about that, they said they specifically targeted a handyman. Could that have been a slip or a leak by an investigator? Yes, absolutely. Could it have also been purposely done to see if this person is going to try and leave, or maybe come up with a fake alibi story when they do question him? That could be the angle too. Anything's possible. Again, I always like to keep, and I think Billy, you're the same way, keep things close to the vest. I don't want too much information out there. And again, you can never release everything, because when you get the right person in the box and they start giving you information, you want to be, like you said, you want to make sure you have the right person. So if that person starts telling you stuff that they could have read in the newspaper, and you know that there's other things, and they're not telling you about it, you know that maybe you don't have the right guy.
Exactly. Diane S., my question, if she met someone, did she and the perp enter the home at the same time? What else might be on the camera? Apparently, the house has a very extensive surveillance system, and potentially the police could have video of who entered and exited that house. Well, they obviously have video of the person dragging that duffel bag up the street. Bando Joy Zep 7. Thank you. That was the word I was searching for. Transparency. And I just couldn't think of it. Thank you so much. Yeah, the police want to be transparent. I don't know why you have to be transparent if you're the police. The government should be transparent. They're not, but the police don't have to tell everyone everything they know. But it allays the fears of people that live in the neighborhood, that, they're not looking for this serial killer. They're not. It seems to be, look, I don't want to disparage the memory of Miss Gaal, but could she have been having an affair or multiple affairs? That's part of what we referred to when we started the show with, of the victimology.
Yeah.
Studying the background of the victim. Who are her friends? Who's her best friends, first of all? Because your best friend usually knows all your business, all right? And your family, it may be a total surprise to them. That happened a lot of times with young teenage girls. We would ask the parents, does your daughter have a boyfriend? Oh, no. And then we would talk to a friend. She's got like 10 boyfriends, and the parents knew absolutely nothing about it. In this case, talking to her friends, her best friend, her peripheral friends, they will know things that no one else in her family knows. So that's all part of victimology and the study of the victim backgrounding, we call it. Another thing you'll hear people talk about is low risk, medium risk, and high risk of becoming a victim of a homicide. And what made her was there some activity? Was there some risky behavior that put her in the high risk level of becoming a victim? And again, I'm not victim blaming, but as a homicide investigator, you have to look at every single possibility. Phil?
Absolutely, Billy. And again, you have to look at every single possibility because you want to get justice for this victim, number one. Number two, the family deserves justice. Number three, you don't want to point the finger at the wrong person. It's funny. Last night, we had gone out to dinner at the Boca Raton Country Club, and there was a lot of us at dinner, and we just happened to be talking about different homicide cases. We spoke about this case, and the family was so intrigued by the amount of these violent murders that take place in the country, in our local area, as well as across the country. But again, the amount of them, and then all of the different things that are done to investigate and bring people to justice. And my cousin made a point. My cousin Joe made a point. He said, you know, when you're talking about a murder, you have to be 100% that you have the right person in custody, because there's nothing worse than sending an innocent person to jail. And I couldn't agree with him more. I've had cases where we were zeroing in on a suspect, and then we had to turn around and it wasn't the person that was responsible for the crime, and go in a different direction. And you cannot be reluctant to do that. That's very, very important. You know, there are times in investigation, specifically in homicide investigation, where you hit a dead end, what we call. You go down that road and you hit a dead end. The information, the evidence is not implicating the person that you think it is. And that's okay. Now you have to, sometimes you have to start from square one. You have to back up, and then you go down a different road or a different avenue. And, you know, if you're a good investigator, you will figure it out. You'll come to the right person. And with all the evidence gathering that's done across the investigation, you'll be able to get the right person and put them in jail.
Well, let's take a quick commercial break.
Joe Murray, attorney at law. Have you found yourself in a jam? Are you in need of legal counsel in the New York City area? Do you need a victim's advocate? Well, Joe Murray is your man. He's not only an experienced trial attorney, he's also a 15-year member of the NYPD. He literally knows both sides of the fence. You could reach Joe at jmurray-law.com. His telephone number is 646-838-1702. Or you can email Joe at jmurray-law.com. Joe's going to be subbing for me tonight, and I just hope he doesn't do too good of a job, because I still want to be able to get back on this show.
That's right. Joe's going to be a co-host tonight as we interview Peter Forcelli, who's a retired ATF Deputy Assistant Director. So it should be a great show. John Beatty Law, www.jbeattylaw.com. John Beatty's a renowned personal injury attorney. He's also a retired, decorated NYPD sergeant. John comes from a proud NYPD and FDNY family. He was an active sergeant in Brooklyn North and supervised in the Legal Bureau. John is a proud member of the Honor Legion and the Blue Knights. John Beatty litigates across the country for seriously injured victims and has helped recover over $200 million for grieving families. Call John now for a free consultation. John Beatty, 917-797-9520. John Beatty Law, www.jbeattylaw.com. We have all these attorneys that were former cops. It's you can see they're real go-getters. Going to law school when you're a member of the service is a very difficult thing to do, but I take my hat off to these guys, unbelievable hard workers, and they become the best attorneys because they know both sides of the fence, you know.
Literally,
so
yes. Hey, Bill, I got to tip my hat to you that you completed your doctorate. Was that?
No, my master's degree while I was on the job. That was pretty hard too. So that's how I know going for law school is got to be 10 times harder.
Yeah, yeah. I know that I got like a call in between there. I didn't hear you, but you did it post job? You got?
No, I went back to school in 2000, and then 9/11 hit, and I went to John Jay. John Jay almost like shut down after 9/11,
right?
And it was really tough to finish that semester. And then I finished my master's in 4 years. But the hard thing about going back to that, I don't want to stray away from this case too much, was I hadn't been to college in like 20 something years.
Sure.
So many things had changed, specifically the internet. And Microsoft Word. I was back when we were using typewriters, and as you were as a squad detective, we used typewriters and carbons. How ridiculous was that? Right?
When I first got into investigations, I was using the manual typewriters where you would just, they would have the ribbon. So, and then eventually we turned into the electric typewriters, and now everything's just on computer.
Yeah, I'm gonna play a little bit more of this, the news report of it. Could you see the different way that the news. So, folks, one of the things, if you noticed the video we were just playing, they were removing a computer, and that was the screen. I would imagine they have the hard drive, because you don't, you have to cast a wide net. You can't just assume someone's not involved. You have to get the evidence that either includes or discludes somebody in the investigation. So they're covering all their bases. Does the police department right now, does Queens Homicide, does the precinct that is covering this murder scene, do they have positive direction? Are they going in the right direction? I believe they are. They're going where the evidence takes them, and that's the most important thing. There are investigations, there are homicide investigations where you have no clue. You don't have a direction. And that's once you find the direction, you can aim the whole investigation toward that direction. And one other thing that's very scary in a homicide investigation is when you're going in one direction and evidence shows you're going in the wrong direction. So you have to change direction right in the middle of an investigation. And that happens. And it's like you have to start all over. And believe me, the big bosses don't like that. They pull out whatever hair they have left on their head when that happens. They're like, what do you mean we went in the wrong direction? Well, we were going where the evidence took us, but guess what? The evidence is now showing us we were going in the wrong direction. And I've seen bosses almost become suicidal when they hear that.
Billy, again, I want to restate, it's not about victim blaming or disparaging the victim in this case, but the facts are the facts. Whatever the investigators uncover in the early stages of investigation, that's the direction that they're going to go in. Like you said, sometimes the direction could be wrong, and then you refocus the investigation in another direction. But it looks like it's been stated several times through the media that they're looking for a person of interest that they're calling an ex-handyman, may have been romantically involved with the victim in this case. Again, I just want to restate it again. It's not about disparaging her or muddying up her name, but the facts are the facts. Obviously, whatever she was doing in her personal life, she did not deserve to be stabbed 60 times. But things that took place in her life, in her personal life, maybe having an affair and trying to break it off, or whatever the case may be, something caused a person to rage against her and to stab her 60 times and kill her. So the facts are just the facts. We don't, make the facts. We just investigate them.
That's for sure. Deborah Barron, maybe texts were meant to throw law enforcement off. Red herring. Well, we know someone sent her husband a text from her cell phone. I mean, that's pretty strong evidence. I mean, if she was dead at that point, how did he have her cell phone? So sort of indicates that he must have somehow been involved in this. And one of the things that, again, we say it all the time, is we're not privy to all the information that the detectives have at their disposal right now. I'm sure they're focused, laser focused on someone right now. And they're putting all the evidence together. People sometimes think too that, once you get someone focused or once you arrest someone, the case is over. No, you got to keep working the case. And that's when you become concerned with, and you should become concerned with this minute one, is how is this case going to be tried if it goes to trial? So you have to be constantly from minute one preparing the case as if it's going to go to trial, and cross your
Dotting
T's,
your I's and
dot
cross
your
your
I's.
T's.
That's right. I think we say that ad nauseum. You're always saying we got to cross the T's and dot the I's, and that's for sure.
Well, when you're up against a good defense attorney and they're critiquing your investigation, you want those I's dotted and those T's crossed. And any experienced investigator is going to do the right thing and do their due diligence. And one quick thing, in the NYPD, we have the luxury of having a a team of investigators. This is not one or two detectives working on this case. This is a lot of people, and we have some great talent within the NYPD. We have great resources. So a lot is being done on this case. Like you said, we don't have the case folder in front of us. We're not reviewing it to say, well, this was done or that was done. These are the things that the avenues that we would go down, the things that we would do. But I'm sure that there's a lot of hard work going into this investigation. There is going to be justice brought for this woman and for her family. I'm certain of it.
Absolutely. Diane S., it's mind-boggling to hear Bill and Phil, the amount of time, insight, intelligence, energy, not to mention what it does to law enforcement on an emotional level. I truly admire you both and all heroes that care. Thank you, Diane S. That's very kind of you to say that. But I agree with you. This isn't the type of work that anyone can do. It does take a toll on you. It takes a toll on you maybe years later. Holly Chick, I love your name. Hiya, Bill and Phil. I had to read that out. Good to see you, Holly Chick. Alicia B., it's difficult to discuss situations like this respectfully. Great job for keeping it respectful at Police Off the Cuff. We try to keep it as respectful as possible. However, we have to deal in reality, and homicide investigation is a hard, ugly reality. And, we all understand the human condition. We understand that people have affairs. We understand that people have other relationships outside their marriages, and we can't ignore it because we're afraid to disparage someone's memory. We have to look into every potential possibility. Drunken Sailor. I don't know if I can take you seriously with that name, but I'm going to read what you wrote. Suspect most likely throwing investigators off, possibly escaped, flew out of the country. I don't think so. I think this guy's still in Queens.
Yeah, that's my opinion too. But Billy, I want to make a quick comment about the comment that Diane made, the first comment that you put up. As an investigator, this is how I felt, and I'm sure that you'll feel the same way, and most investigators that are investigating a homicide feel. You have an obligation, once that responsibility has been placed on anybody that's involved in the case, that you're investigating a murder, you're going to speak for that dead person. You're going to try and get justice for that dead person. So you have that weight on your shoulders, specifically the lead detective, the detective who's assigned to the case. He has that obligation. And that's not something that I ever took lightly. Now, I have that on my shoulders, the weight of that. I'm assigned to the case. I have to provide justice for that person. So the obligation is to provide justice and get the right person and do the best thing that you can do, the best job that you can do to bring justice and bring that person to justice. And don't forget, it's not an easy thing to do, to testify in open court at a trial. It's very difficult. But if you have all your ducks in a row and you did your investigation properly and you did your due diligence, it's not going to be that hard to come up with a conviction on a perpetrator on a very important case like this.
Yeah, I mean, this is the video on the screen of the person pulling that. I like to go back a little bit. The person pulling that duffel bag. It appears that it was on wheels, and you could see the person appears to be a bit small, not a large person, And then there's, of course, Orsolya Gaal, but by all, she seemed to be loved by a lot of the people in the community. Of course, the community gets upset when anything like this occurs. But look, I think again we're talking about a lot of things that we're not privy to. We're not privy to the direction. There seems to be some smoking gun type evidence. Yeah, Tom Cusinelli, afternoon, gents, jumped on late. Tom's an attorney, a retired NYPD captain. Good to see you, Tom. Lieutenant Peter Pranzo, always great to see you in the chat. Marie Green, sale of possible if hired. I like that drunken sailor. The victim is someone's, yeah, absolutely. We're trying to treat the victim with as much respect as we possibly can. Betty Smith, we don't know if she was having an affair or not. We don't know anything about their marriage, if he was having affairs on the side too, if it was an open marriage, if the husband treated her badly. Betty Smith, you're right, but the detectives do know. And the investigators know what her life was about. And as I explained early on in the show, That's why we do what's called a victimology, to learn as much as we possibly can about the lifestyle of the victim. And as I said, repeated, we're not looking to do victim blaming, but we're not here to moralize. We're here to solve a murder, And I'm not specifically talking about Phil and I. We had our days of solving murders. Now we're telling you what the police do to attempt to solve this murder.
Absolutely, Billy. And like you said in the very open of the show, we want to take all the information and narrow it down and bring it in and closer until we have enough to drop the hammer on the suspect. I don't think it'll be long. As I said earlier, arrest is imminent. I really feel for this family. They lost a wife, a mother. I don't know what the extended family is, relatives, but justice is going to be served in this case. Unfortunately, she was murdered, but now the only thing that's left is to bring the person responsible in arrest and bring justice to that person.
Joe Busto, several landmarks are in the pic, so it should be simple to determine the height of the suspect dragging the duffel bag. Joe, that's a great point. And one of the things that I just feel, and again, if you try to describe to other people, what does it look like? For some reason, this guy looks very small and he looks young to me. He does.
Yeah.
And again, I just assumed that it's a male. We don't know that. But by the gait, the way the person moves, to me, it appears to be a male. But again, I can't prove that by looking at that footage. But yeah, a lot of good things you can get from as they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words.
I'm sure that there's going to be a multitude of video, Billy. As you know, today in 2022, just about everyone has video cameras on their home. That's a residential area. There could possibly be even where the body was dumped, traffic cameras. There's going to be a lot of video surveillance on this case. They put out that snippet because that gives a good indication of the person. Like you said, it's an educated guess or it's an opinion. It looks like a person maybe possibly in their 20s, looks like a young person. It does look like a male. It doesn't look like the person is heavy. They look like a slender build. They also look like they're not very tall. So I don't think that those are very outlandish statements to make. It's an opinion. It's an educated guess. But there's probably a lot more that video that we don't see, we don't have privilege to see right now, but they put out that snippet because, again, someone might recognize a person very close to the perpetrator, might recognize them and say, wait a second, that's Joe Blow from Avenue O, and call in a lead, call in a tip. And again, if that person does that.
And how do you find Joe Blow from Avenue O? That's a tough one.
Well, first thing you got to do is you got to go to Avenue O and then you look for Joe Blow. But
that's true. Betty Smith. Maybe she wasn't having an affair, but the ex-handyman texted her and said he was out of jail and wanted to talk to her. She thought she'd meet him at the bar, but he still had a key and met her at his house. Betty Smith, anything is possible, and we don't know. But, it's the job of investigators to narrow down the possibilities and to go on where the evidence leads them. But I'm not discounting anything you said. Another one, there was just another, I just lost that little piece of chat there. Brad R. Immature, I've been saying, where's his car and where was he going with that bag? Well, he dumped the bag. He wasn't going anywhere. He dumped it. He wanted, for some reason,
he wanted the body removed.
Psyche, he wanted the body away from the house, away from his dirty deed,
Maybe he thought they weren't going to go into the basement for an extended period of time, and if the body was removed, it wouldn't decay and smell or whatever. We don't know what that person was thinking. I'm sure if they do get a confession out of the person, he'll explain that. But again, it was dark. It was at night. Maybe he didn't realize that the blood was dripping from the suitcase, and he left the trail that took the police right back to the location. And again, maybe he didn't think that where he dumped the body, that it was going to be found so quickly. He didn't think it out. I'm saying the person didn't think it out very clearly. Obviously, it would sound like it was instantaneous rage that caused the person to commit the homicide. And then it wasn't thought through very clearly. And he exited the home with the body and dumped it a few blocks away.
Folks, there's a million possibilities. I know now folks are bringing up a car. How do we know he didn't get? We don't know. We don't know. We absolutely don't know how the killer got there. We do not know. Could he have parked his car several blocks away and ran to his car? Yeah, there's a million possibilities, but we're not conducting this investigation. We're just trying to give our expertise and tell you what the investigators will be looking for. And
If he
that's
did have a car and the bag is leaking blood and he knows it, maybe that's why he didn't want to put it in the car. But again, like you said, Billy, we don't know what we don't know. Obviously, the internal part of the investigation, they will know the answer to these questions.
100%. Phil, we're at about an hour and 7, I think. Folks, we're going to stay with this case till it's solved. But tonight I have, I'm doing a show at 9 p.m. tonight, and co-host the very popular, the very handsome, the very tough former police officer Joe Murray, former boxer Joe Murray. He's going to be the co-host.
Good man.
And we're interviewing Peter Forcelli, who's a retired ATF. Well, he was also on this job. He started out in housing, and he was a housing homicide, and then he was Bronx homicide. And then he left this job, and he became a big shot with the ATF. That's the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. He's a retired deputy assistant director. And I want to ask him a bunch of questions because all we're hearing about lately is the iron pipeline and ghost guns. And I want to hear his opinion. He actually testified in that case, Fast and Furious, where the government had egg all over their face. So he'll be a very, very, very interesting guest. So if you're not doing anything tonight at 9 p.m., please tune in. It's going to be a fantastic show. And look, I miss Phil. He's in Florida. He's having a good time. He's got a break from stirring that big pot of sauce he stirs all the time at his house. He's getting a little sun and sand. He looks healthy, doesn't he? But I pulled him in today. I pulled him in today to do the show. He's using his cell phone in his hotel room. I think he did a great job. So, Philly, I guess you should have final words.
Final words. Let me just see if I can show you guys a view from my room. I don't know if you guys are going to be able to see this, but can you see that, Billy? Is that
yes?
Okay.
It looks beautiful.
Yeah, that we're down by the ocean in Deerfield. We're actually leaving. We're going to a different part of Florida tomorrow. Actually, maybe later today we're leaving. But in the early part of the show, when we first came on, I was talking about my friend Joe Ponzi that passed away. This is a guy that gave his life. He died from 9/11 related cancer, from exposure to ground zero. It's unfortunate that people are still sick and dying from that day, that horrible day, over 20 years ago. To me, he's a hero. He's a true, great human being. He was a great friend. I'm going to miss him dearly. And I'm looking forward to doing the tribute show on Joe. With regard to this case that we talked about today, I'm very confident that there's going to be an arrest made. And it's just a matter of time at this point. And I'm glad that I got to do it, Billy. I was getting a little bit of withdrawal.
Hey, you're going through a police off-the-cuff real crime story withdrawal.
Absolutely, 100%. And so, again, I'll be back probably the end of the week, and we'll get right back into it. And looking forward to tonight's show, Billy. I think that's going to be a good one with Joe. You guys will probably do a great show tonight. Rest in peace, Joe Ponzi. God bless.
Thank you, Phil. And thanks, folks. Thank you so much for watching today. And God bless Joe Ponzi. And if you're around tonight at 9 p.m., come on. I'm going to have a great show tonight. God bless everyone.
Stay safe.
One episode just ain't enough.